Don't expect a large class because of tonight being B'dikas Chametz, but I figured learn something short for Yom Tif. It's on page 22 of the PDF, bottom left-hand corner. The Mammar starts Hayom Ra'ov Vayonos.
I have Lahavin Ma Shomrim Bahagada.
Yeah, so that's page 1 or 3. Go down to page 22,
Oh, okay.
and you'll see at the bottom left-hand corner, the Mammar starts Hayom Ra'ov Vayonos. It's part of the Hallel davening. Got it?
Well, I'm trying to get to the right page. It's 24.
That should be 22.
Yeah, now I have 22. I was just on the way. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I see it.
Hayom Ra'ov Vayonos, Haharim Rak Tuch. So there's two responses to wherever they saw. The sea saw and moved back, ran backwards, and the mountains danced like young rams. Why would the mountains dance? And the sea sees and splits and it runs backwards. The Shalah was just last week. Says in Aaron teaches us in Masechtas Pesachim that Kihanisa hiya avodah miyira. The reason why the sea runs away from the revelation is because the sea's a service is avodah of fear, and fear you run backwards. Vayar ha'am vayinunu vayamdu mirachik. It said the people saw and they moved backwards. Yira is from a distance. The harikud and the dancing is an expression of avodah mi'ava, of a service of love. Ubechinas sar ubechinas eved. So actually, mamish today's Tanya. This is the difference between a person who's a sar, who's a minister, who has a relationship with the king, on at least a political level, and the level of a servant. The servant is yira, and a sar is ava, serves the king out of love. When there's a revelation of the king, we're talking about in Hallel, the revelation that happened on the splitting of the Red Sea, right? That's the beginning of the chapter in Tehillim, which is part of Hallel. So Bizgalas HaMelech, when there's a revelation of the king, this is more connected to the seventh day of Pesach. Azai Bechinasar, the person who's a minister who has a relationship with the king on a level, let's say, Shavedase B'Simcha, that serves the king out of joy, has an understanding of what it means to serve the king, is when there's a revelation, how does that affect him or her? Is Tigdal Simchasai. Their simcha becomes larger. When the king reveals himself, it's a cause for more excitement. V'zehu Aharim, this is the mountains. Har represents something large. Shehem midas Atzilas. This is the attributes of Atzilas, where Ihu v'garmei Echad, God is all one. Shemisham shorish haneshamis. There is the source of the souls. Hanikroim achim lamakim, that could be called as brothers to the king, to the God. Kesar lifnei hamelech, like a sar, like a minister before the king. So therefore, when there's a revelation of God, so the higher attributes of Atzilas, the souls from the levels of Atzilas, that's why they dance, because the revelation is a cause for joy. But a person who's a servant, that the servant's service to God is all about fear. Azai, so what happens when there's a revelation? There's more revelation of the king. Azai b'skalas hamelech, when the king reveals himself on a higher level, in a more revealed level, is tipul ha'ema v'pachad b'yoseh. Then they get more scared, right? What happened to the Jewish people when God revealed himself at Har Sinai, like I quoted before? They got fearful. Therefore, the sea. And what's the sea represent? The sea is already Malchus of Atzilis, the Olam Abriya, the world of creation. The sea covers over. We don't see, so they have less. They see less. That's like a servant before the king. So therefore, when the waters see the revelations of godliness, Vayonis, they run backwards. They get scared. It's an expression of fear. Lahavin Zabbataisus beer to understand this. We're not talking about scared of punishment or scared of something else. It's frightful of revelation. It's so revealing It gives you a fear. The Havens Abbataisus beer to understand the difference between the mountains that have a revelation, they dance because of love, and the servant who serves out of fear, like the sea, and therefore when there's more revelation, it's more fearful. The Havens Abbataisus beer, we must explain Inyan Shvi Pesach. What does it mean? The seventh day of Pesach. That was the day of the splitting of the sea. It's explained in the writings of the Ariya Kadosh. Shehu Gam Kein Inyan Leidus Haneshama. The splitting of the Red Sea is a representation of the birth of the Jewish soul. That the Jewish people went out, they walked into the sea, into the Yabasha. It was dry in the land. It was dry where the sea was. So what does this mean? We know that there's a process. Everything has a process. Right? Conception is a process, and eventually there's a birth. So too, the neshamas, the souls of the Jewish people, they started off as a thought. Yisrael olu b'machshava. They started off as a thought. At the level of a thought, means God's thinking obviously about the positive and the high levels of what the soul can achieve. So at the potential of the soul, we're called brothers, friends and brothers to God. What does it mean to be a friend and a brother? Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what does that mean? What representation is that of a God? Is Bechinas Arein Seif Baruch Hu, the infinite light, when the infinite light encloses itself in the attributes of Atzilus. He ain't Seif Baruch Hu ba'atzmi lav mikol inun midus iu klal. We've learned this. God himself is not defined by the attributes. To call God kind is a definition that's lowering God to be defined, or great, what have you. So the God is not the midas. So God encloses himself in the midas of Atzilus to be defined as something that we could recognize. Even the midas of Atzilus, we don't know what Chesed is. Our idea of Chesed is nothing close to the idea of Chesed of Atzilus, but at least it's in the framework of concept of kindness, of giving. So nevertheless, for God, that's a descent to be defined as something. You can't call the essence of God any kind of name. A name defines something. You give someone the name, a title of a doctor, a lawyer, a baker, a painter. That defines the person. God's not defined by any kind of attribute or action, or potentially. It's only talking about the revelation. God reveals himself in such a way to be revealed in a way of attributes. And then we start the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is a name. Yud starts with the Chachma, Hey is the Bina, Vav is the Zayin Midos. This next Hey is Malchus. That's the attributes of Hashem. Now that's that. So God is Maluvish. He's trying to explain what does it mean that we're brothers and sisters to God. So if we're brothers and friends to God, if we're brothers and friends to God, is where God defines himself in the Midos. And the Jewish people come in that level. The Jewish people are all over Makshava, and the thought is the neshamas of Atzilus, the souls of Atzilus. So we're brothers and friends. Yes, Aaron.
Okay. If we're brothers and sisters, but it says in the Torah we're his children.
There's different levels.
Okay.
In many times, King Solomon, his brothers, sisters, his mothers, his fathers. There's different levels of how our relationship with God is. So he says like this: Samech Riba Neshamas Yisrael. Riba is a unit of 10,000. So Samech Riba is 10,000 is 600,000. So which is the number of Jewish souls that there is as units. So he needs Samech Riba Neshamas Nishmas Yisrael. Shemshachim Misamech Riba Oisis Amachshava. That now the Alter Rebbe is teaching us something. I mean, he's always teaching us something. Here's something new that I haven't learned yet or remembered. That there's 600,000 words of the thought process. Nikroim Achim, all those that we're called brothers to Hashem. The Kutra Brichu, Shehema Midos. The Midos, the attributes and the levels of the source of the soul are considered brothers to God. He gives an example. When someone has a thought in an intellectual idea, because it's all internal, the words and an idea, we can't separate the words from the idea, because when we articulate something, we're totally watering down our idea, right? We're watering down. We have something important to say, especially if you're a great teacher and you're teaching a simple student. or a child, right? So you know it's so large, and you have to put it into words for the child. So the words of communication are very separate from the intellect. But that's where you're trying to communicate it. But when you're thinking about it to yourself, it's all to yourself. So all you see is the idea. Can't separate the words from the idea. So then the words and the idea is all one. That's the idea when it says in the world of Atzilus, God, his attributes and the vessels are all one. It's all a level of godliness. So if that's where the souls come from, it means Olu b'machshav is the source. The source of the soul is the level of we're like brothers to God. This means that we have a chelik elikam imal mamish. We have a part of godliness within us. So this Aaron answers your questions. There's different levels. So at the level of the thought of the soul, just like your thought when you think of an intellectual idea, not for a reason of communication, just as the idea is, you can't separate the words because words can mean anything. But in your mind, when it's together with a deep idea, you don't separate the words from the idea. Oh, you can't process an idea without having words. That's why in Chassidus and Kabbalah, words are very important. Words go to the deepest source of creation and essence of the being of what we're talking about. Because a person doesn't have to process words. The letters and formulate on themselves, but the letters are just vessels to an idea. Just the proof is that you could think one thing that's very deep and very important, and you could think something very foolish, sometimes using the same exact words, just how you formulate the words. So here, so how do we go from being a thought of God, which is almost connected to the essence of God, we're brothers to God, to become a soul that's a personality, that's a yesh, that's something, and separate from God, right? We don't feel we're not conscious of our source while we live here in this world, and we're all the way in the world of action. Hey Ariel, how could we become a creation from being a thought that's one with God to now becoming a creation, a soul that's separate seemingly from God? We're totally separate from the nothingness of God. As our soul was a thought in the world of Atzilus, we were actually a part of godliness. When we say some things are the words of thought, even that is just the way only for us to understand. It means we also don't to compare the level of the soul as words in the thought or words in an idea in the seichel is also just the way so we could get some sort of idea to understand how one we are with God. The shachar means something for the ear to understand. God's thought process is not like our thought process. So when we say that that the neshama is alu b'machshava, enters the thought process of God, the oneness of the soul with God is on a level that we don't even understand. So how do we come into a soul that's a being, something separate from God? That's the process of malchus. Malchus takes it now, brings it out to the world of action, to the world of speech. It goes into the world of creation. Then it becomes a garment and it conceals the godliness. To become something. See, what we're trying to explain is the beginning of the part of Hallel, right? So what we're getting to is, why is there fear and why is there love? Revelation is only bringing you back where you started from. If you started from as being an essence of God, so why is revelation give fear to a person? So it depends how much you've separated from your source. If you separate from your source where you no longer have any consciousness of where you come from, so revelation scares you. But if you're a person who's conscious while they're separate, that I'm really one with God, so the revelation makes me happy and excited. That's why the mountains danced and the sea ran away, because it's all about your consciousness to your source. So therefore he says, God enclothed himself in kingdom, into kingship. A king, by definition, that's why it says there's no king without a nation. A king is not a father. A king is a king. A father over many children, as much as you would like to believe you're the king in your house, your kids are not buying it. So a king is a father, and a king is a king. There's no king without a people. What does it mean people separate? That you could be a king over. That you're elevated, separate from them. And that separation creates a fear. Like I just said, you could have 100 children. The father won't be called a king. Therefore, Malchus is called the sea because it covers. It doesn't show us the source. When we don't see our source, so then when we get a revelation, imagine you never knew the king's your father. So when you look at the king as a king, and the king reveals himself more to you, you get scared. Imagine you're able to really bring it to your consciousness. This is my father. It's not just my king. Avinu Malkeinu. So nikra malchus yam. Everything on the dry land is in the sea. We just don't see it. We can't see it. The sea covers it. So too above. When God said, "Let there be light," the utterance that created light in the world. Let there be the heavens. And that utterance gives life to the existence of creation. That utterance, because it's an utterance, it's a communication, it's separate from its source. Therefore, the people could live in the world and not see God. So the utterance comes from the world of Atzilus. Therefore, it creates. But it creates in such a way where the creations are no longer conscious of their creator. That's why Avram had to find God. Had creation, had the physicality been conscious of their creation, they'd be nullified to the source. You wouldn't feel as a separate entity. The ray of the sun knows its source is the sun. That's why it emanates light. And therefore, it never tries to find its own identity. Imagine the ray, the light that emanates from the sun, thought it was its own source of life. It gave off its own light. It never would think that. It knows the only reason why it's giving off light is because it comes from the sun. And the ray doesn't feel like something. Only time the ray has an ability to think that it is its own entity is if it loses its identity to know that it comes from the luminary from the sun. So too, anything that was created. Had we been conscious of our creator, we would never have an identity. We'd always be conscious that we're existing and continue to exist from the utterances of God. Which is the spirituality that created us. We would never be a definition of a soul or an angel. Because these are all separate. Our ability to be separate is only on our idea that we think we don't recognize our creator. We don't see our creator. The sea covers it over. Like the sea covers over everything that's inside of it. So if they would have revelation, we would have love. And the love would make us want to lose ourselves, to be one with our creator. So because we come through separation, revelation, and when we understand our creator, it's from a distance, and that distance creates fear. And this is again explaining why the sea was fearful and the mountains danced. This is the rule, the Alter Rebbe says. Malchus, the attribute of Malchus is what allows for something so any creation, any of the creations, it could be an angel, and especially us in this world, to feel like I'm a yesh, I'm something. What does something mean? Something means as if I exist, I have an identity, I have an existence outside of God. Even if I battle, I'm ritzoina, even if I nullify, I say, I'm choosing God. By saying I'm choosing God is there's me and I'm choosing God. So there's that separation, and God should be thankful I chose him. Wow, I could have chosen something else. And in theory, he is thankful that you chose him because you could have chosen something else. But nevertheless, that comes from separation. The ability to even think that you could choose something else is because you feel separate from Hashem. So he says, so therefore, the soul goes through through a pregnancy process to go from being something that's one with God to becoming something that a nivra, something that's created that feels separate from God. And by the way, that's the whole process, the time between Shmini Atzeres and Shvisha Pesach. I'm not sure what that means, what's going on in our life, what happened last year, Shmini Atzeres, this past Shmini Atzeres. We'll find out maybe when Shvisha Pesach comes. On the 8th day of Sukkot, let the rain come. The souls go into, so to say, the womb of the female. And they wait 7 months. I mean, just like a baby, has to be in the process of the mother to go from a seed to become a child, the 7 to 9 months of the pregnancy. So to a soul, to become from something godly, to become something that's a nivra, creation separate seemingly from God, it has to go through a pregnancy process. When's the conception? That's Shmini Atzeres. When's the birth? That's Shvi Shal Pesach. The time of birth. It's just like in the physical sense. How does the child come from the seed of the father? The seed, it has to process 7 months in the womb of the mother, of the female. Turning to page 24. And how does the seed grow into a child, a healthy child? It nourishes off the foods and the doings of the mother, right? The mother eats and drinks. The mother has to eat and drink in a healthy way in order to properly nourish the fetus inside her. Until it can become a child. The child leaves the mother and becomes its own person. So too the souls. How do we go from the world of Atzilus, where we're brothers with God, we're friends with God? We're nothing. We have no identity. How can we become something? We also kind of wait in the spiritual womb of the mother. We get lights, and it's a process like the child, the fetus goes from a seed to a child, so too the soul becomes into a being. And the 7th day of Pesach, who laid this in Neshamas? This is when the souls get a birth, get an identity. This is when the Jewish people became a nation. How could it be birth in an opening of the womb? Now the soul goes out to a place like the body, like the baby goes out to a new world. Just like giving birth is a hard process, right? The body wants to keep the baby in. So the whole difficulty of the childbirth is that there has to be a higher power that says, no, the soul has to go out. The baby has to go out to the world. There's a purpose here. The baby maybe wants to stay with the mother. Why should I leave my source? I get nourishment, I get everything. So there has to be a higher force that says, no, it's time to go out to the world. So to the soul, it's getting its identity from the world. It went from nothingness to something, but it doesn't want to go out to the world. Do I want to go out to the world and have challenges? Do I want to have to go to the world and have difficulties? That I'm struggling to be the best me that I can be? All the challenges that we go through on a day-to-day basis, the soul doesn't want to go into that. So there has to be a higher power that tells the soul there's a purpose here. So it comes on Shvi Shal Pesach. That was the revelation of the splitting of the Red Sea. God had to come with a very strong, powerful wind coming from the east. Because if it went through a process of Seder Hishtalshus, the very things are, of evolution, so to say, from intellect to emotions to thought and speech, it still will never become something separate. The soul would never want to lose its connection to God. There has to be a higher level of godliness that's even higher than the source of the soul that says, no, your whole reason why you came into a thought was not just, sometimes we, in life, when we have a thought about something that we want to do, so we never want to do it. Why don't we want to do it? Because in the thought process, it's so beautiful. In the thought process, let's say we have an idea, it's perfect. The idea is perfect. Our imaginative thing that we're imagining in a vacation, getting married, imagining having children, imagining all the nice things that could happen in our life, right? So whatever that thing is. So we like to keep it in our thoughts, because to make it happen is not so easy. There's a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges to go out there and make it happen. So in our thought process, it's beautiful. So too, the soul in the thought process of God, where the soul is going to go out there and reveal godliness in the world, that's a beautiful thought. But it's not an easy thought to actualize. So therefore, to take that thought and bring it into the world and say, go out there, struggle, deal with your Yetzer Hara, deal with the challenges from within and from your own challenges that you created, and the challenges from the forces that are almost outside of your control. You need a higher force to say, no, you can't stay in the thought process. You have to go into the world. And that has to be something that's higher than the thought. Because if you just rely on the thought, right? Then you may stay in the thought process. The thought itself is beautiful. But there has to be something that's higher than the thought that says, no, you can't stay in the world of machshava, of dimyon, of imagination. You have to go into the real world. And for that, there has to be a higher force that pushes it through. So that's that comes shekulam shavim kamei, that everything is equal to that level. That was the way the Kriyas Yamsuf, the sea split open and revealed that the souls should come out to this world. The way the sea covers is only the way the system of creation. But God was able to turn the sea into dry land. Look, you think this separation is covering? Open it up. See what could happen. Let the thought be actualized. Dry out the waters that are concealing it, that also protecting it. To be in the world of thought and bring you to the world of action, you're actually walking in the dry land, in where the sea once was. This is what the Zohar says. That Moshe Rabbeinu is standing there at the moment the Jewish people are at the sea, and there's this force, like in the childbirth. There's nowhere to go. What are we supposed to do? Egypt is pushing us out, and the sea is holding us in. So where do we go? So God says, Moshe started to pray to God, and God says, "Matitzikulai, why are you crying to me?" Ba'atika Talia Milsa, the Zohar says, this is not something that's connected to this is not something you could understand. This is not something connected to the system of creation. It has a higher power. This comes to the world of Atik, the world of pleasure. God takes pleasure not in the thought, in the action. That's why it's Seif Ma'isa Machshava Techila. That's why our world is the most important world. It's not the world. All the ideas beyond our world are concept. An angel is a beautiful idea, but there's no challenges. God, where do you touch the essence of God is in this world. And therefore he says, Batika Talia Milsa. This is connected to the highest level of godliness, Atik, the depth, the innermost part of the crown of the king. And from there, there's going to be a birth. You guys are going to go out as souls, as people, into this world and march into Eretz Yisrael to make it into a dir b'tachtonim, a place for God. But when that happens, when the moment of revelation of what that God shows us our purpose and shows us where we come from and shows us our potential, that's not just a thought that we're actually going out to the world. So that revelation has two effects on depending on the type of person you are. Is Azai Ha'arim, the mountains, and understand they start dancing. They realize that their purpose and challenge is an exciting opportunity. Harim Heim Chagas, those are the inner midos of Chesed, Gvur, Tferes, Ugvois, and the hilltops. Chagas de Bria, Oinetzach Hoid Yisoid Atzilus, different parts of the emotions, but within the world of Atzilus. And because they're beyond the contraction, they're still conscious of their creator. The dancing like rams. When they get to such a high revelation of what happened in splitting the Red Sea, to help them to actualize that they give birth of their soul, they have a consciousness of, while it's happening, of their source. So the revelation excites them. It excites them, A, on the revelation, and B, on the mission. And they lose their limitations. By the revelation of the splitting of the Red Sea, they lose their limitations of the worlds of fixing of the vessels, and they're able to connect to the essence of who they come from in the way they are in this world. Every Shabbos there's an elevation where the world gets back to its purpose. Shabbos is to elevate the whole week. The week we go out there and engage in our challenges of the world, and on Shabbos we elevate it to holiness. So every week has that. What's different? Shvi Pesach. It's all within a system. But what was revealed to become born as an entity, as something, that's a much greater revelation even than the revelation of Shabbos. Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, it has to go up through a process. When Ikar Hiluch, that's called walking. When you walk somewhere, that's irregular. When you run and dance somewhere, you're excited, right? You could go to somewhere, you could go to one place, both going to the same place even. How do you go there? Do you walk slowly or do you dance there? When there's a revelation of the splitting of the Red Sea, the souls of the mountains and the hills start to dance. That's when you dance, you elevate on a much higher, beyond the system of proportion. Then you dance into the world of the soviv, to the light of the infinite, like the ram she'ein bem das. You don't have das. It's not about systemize it. It's just excited about the revelation. Again, as long as you're conscious of your source, conscious of your purpose, when you're revealed, when God reveals himself in the splitting of the Red Sea, reveals your purpose, tells you go out to the world, it excites you. Your opportunities excite you, notwithstanding of the challenges. Doesn't mean that the challenges are different, but because you're clear with the mission, therefore you're able to be excited. Yes. Aaron.
What's the source?
God.
Oh, okay.
He says, and the Rebbe says that the source of this ability for a person to connect to the essence of the light is beyond understanding. It's not because you understand it. It's you feel it, you know it. When you know something, you don't have to explain it. Right? Someone says, why are you dancing? When certain people dance to the gas chambers, when the Chassidim danced to the gas chambers, they couldn't sit down and have a conversation and say, tell the Gestapo officer 1 second, and let me explain to everyone why I'm dancing. There was no time to explain. Those who understood, those who didn't understand, those who went in crying, and those who went in panicking, and there was those Chassidim who went in dancing. Why? Because there's nothing you can explain. That's l'malam min das. Avayam soifa dechol dargim, but the sea, which is the end of all levels, hamaster malam kshira. So what happens? So the mountains who have a consciousness, they danced, but the sea, which is meant to conceal things, separate what's revealed and not revealed. When it saw the revelations of Soviv, that says that now you have to be, what you're concealing has to be connected to you. It couldn't become one with its source, like a flame to a fire. Like the mountains. So what did it do? It had to run away. It had to say, I can't conceal anymore. Its whole purpose is to conceal things. So when it sees the great light, it runs away. The sea ran away and says, let me show you what's there. It all of a sudden revealed everything that's under the sea. But it couldn't stay as an entity, because its whole existence is to conceal things. So the great light connected the higher powers to their source. But the part of the sea that conceals things, that separates a person from their conscious, their conscious from the subconscious, from what they know, from what they don't know. So when they saw that, it can't exist anymore, because its whole existence is to conceal. And it stopped concealing, and therefore it showed a level of revelation. It's like a person. When a person has an idea, until it comes down to speech, the idea comes into speech. So when a person gets a tremendous light of intellect, the person can't talk. When something is so great in your mind, the only time when you could articulate it is when you break it down. You narrow it. You get it into a small unit, and I can explain it as an idea. But when the idea becomes so great, overwhelming in your head, that's why crying. What's crying? Crying is the same idea in emotions. Why does a person cry? Because you have no other, you can't say anything. The emotion is so great inside you, you have no way to articulate it. You can't explain what you're feeling, so you start crying, whether it's fear, emotions of sadness or emotions of happiness. And what is everyone, like you said, what is everyone getting excited about or fearful about? From the Od and the ruler of the land, the infinite light that's above creation, that could turn the flintstone, and in all the different stones, they give out fire. Something that gives out fire, the flintstone should turn into something that is water. Something that's severity should turn to kindness. Every identity loses its idea, because it's not connected to its creator, so it's no more defined. Like it says, God makes peace between the angel of Michal and Gavriel. How could he make peace between an attribute of kindness and an attribute of severity? Is a higher power. And this is what Pesach is. God jumped. We jump out of ourselves. We jump out of our limitations. We jump out of thinking that we're separate from God. Even without an awakening from below, we're jumping on the mountains. That's all an initiation. So we start off tonight, guys. By me, it's already Erev Pesach. Tonight, we're going to say Hallel. We're going to say Hallel after davening Mammar. We're going to say Hallel by that God. Then we know that either we're a mountain or the sea, we're feeling love and we're feeling fear. There's revelations of God tonight that was never revealed. This is the revelation of freedom. This is the revelation of us becoming a people. And we're excited, so we're Pesach, we jump out of ourselves. But that's the initial avodah. The initial avodah is just jump out of your limitations. But after that, it's coming tomorrow night, the night afterwards, the second night of Pesach starts Mitzvah Sfiras Omer. We start counting the Omer. Mem Tes Yomi Machas Shabbos. We start counting 49 days. Then you're no longer jumping out of ourselves. Once we jumped out of ourselves, now we have to refine ourselves. Get to know yourself again. Shalom Aleichem. My name is Mendy. Get to know yourself. Know your weaknesses. Know your strengths. Work on them. The next 49 days, and so we should be able to stand by the mountain on Har Sinai in the 50th day. Then we start working on ourselves. And it comes Shavuos Panim and Panim. Then we can have a real, so to say, conversation face to face to God. Not only have we jumped out of our limitations, but we also then work in that status of excitement, and out of the limitations, we took advantage of that, not to run away from ourselves, but to find ourselves and refine ourselves. So comes the holiday of Shavuos. We could stand with God face to face and receive the Torah, hopefully Matan Torah. Wishing everyone here a wonderful, beautiful Pesach, and all the things that we've learned about Pesach, we should, and if you learned in other places, we should internalize with it, become one with it, and we should be zoichet to great miracles tonight, going onwards with the coming of Mashiach. Laila Tov and happy Pesach. Take care.
Laila Tov, thanks.